Mr. Steve Brine.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I hope my honourable friend from Harlow can at least hear, and hopefully we can get him back to open the debate, having it already been opened. But I was indeed, along with the honourable lady from Twickenham, made the application to the Backbench Business Committee. Of course, when we made this application, the Prime Minister's National Roadmap, as of Monday, had not been announced. And so we were very much pushing for a national educational route map out of COVID-19 for schools and colleges, as is the title of the debate. We, of course, are all delighted that the Prime Minister made that announcement on Monday and that all schools will return to all pupils, or at least be able to return for all pupils, from the 8th of March. And the Honourable Member for Harlow, of course, leads the Select Committee with aplomb, and I wouldn't try to take his place, but I know that what he will be covering in this debate is around the issues of testing, of course, around the practicality issues around that, but I know that he will be majoring on the issues around the catch-up fund and the announcement by the Secretary of State this morning during his statement around exams for this year's cohort. So hopefully he will get his chance to make that pitch at some point during today's debate. For my point, obviously I greatly welcome the 8th of March. I've called for that to happen in this House many times, as have so many colleagues across all benches. As I said on Monday, it is absolutely the right decision. As a constituency MP for almost 11 years, I have to say I have never seen such concern and anxiety from parents and grandparents for the current state of mind and state of education of their children as I have seen in recent months. They are beyond worried about their children, and they are beyond worried about the impact of this dreadful pandemic on them. And so that is what led me to push as hard as I did for schools to return. That is not to say that I am a let-it-rip merchant in any state of the word, whether that be within the wider economy or whether in schools. Of course, we have to have a cautious, irreversible, balanced and data-driven release from lockdown, and we have to have exactly a cautious, irreversible, data-driven return of our schools and our colleges. And I believe that that is what the government is trying to set out. There is no point in pretending, and the Prime Minister made this very clear on Monday, that there will not be an impact on cases and hospitalisations and even on deaths as a result of lifting restrictions on our economy. And anybody who seeks after the 8th of March to say, well, you know, this is the consequence that wasn't admitted to by the government at the time would be disingenuous, to put it mildly. There will be an impact to reopening schools, but there is a huge impact to keeping schools closed, and we have to balance those two, which is why I say we want a measured, data-driven return of schools. Yes, I will briefly, but I don't want to mess with the time for the Deputy Speaker.
Suggestions, and I spoke to the Minister beforehand and before coming to the House. In the past, before COVID-19, we had things called summer schools, which took place after summer. We haven't had summer schools for the last year. Does the honourable gentleman feel that maybe one way of getting beyond this, whenever the schools go back, that we also have summer schools, and for that to happen we need the funding?
I hope that we can now proceed. This is rather difficult circumstances. Mr. Brine.
Yeah, I mean, I think summer schools are part of the catch-up programme, but the gentleman's got his point on the record. So in many ways, the announcement on Monday about the return of schools was naming a date. That was the easy part. The challenge now is how we do that in that cautious, irreversible way that I've spoken about. Now I've reached out and I've heard from many of my constituency head teachers in the last 48 hours. And I have to say, the negativity and the yes, but what about drain of some national figures on this subject is strikingly different in talking to my constituency heads, with their sort of practical Winchester good sense that I've seen from them. Let me just quote from one. There is certainly a lot of work to be done before the 8th of March, but there is a sense of positivity and relief of our pupils coming back to school. And that is typical of what I've heard, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I've been interested to hear, as there's much talk today during the debate around safety in schools, comments such as, I'm very happy to report, Mr. Brine, that we have had no COVID cases in schools since September. or we've no confirmed adult or child COVID cases since this all started almost a year ago, brackets not tempting fate. Now, this will not, of course, be the case everywhere. There are terrible tales and there are terrible examples, but I cannot but be honest and report to the House that that is what I've had from some of my constituency heads. None of which is to say that we don't have problems. Of course we do. And I'm just going to touch on 3 of them and I'll let others speak. Testing for COVID. The testing issue is right up there for my secondaries, of course. Now, whether we like it or not, the return will be a staggered return for many in the week of the 8th of March, prioritising years 10 and 11. But I think it's just the sheer practicality of testing all students 3 times that is the challenge. As one said to me, I'm deploying as many staff as possible to testing while still allowing teaching to take place. So for big secondary schools, where the majority arrive by bus, there's an obvious compounding factor which makes extended hours or weekend testing very, very difficult. But we will get it done, which is that can-do attitude. And speaking to the Secretary of State this lunchtime, he reminded me that the guidance released yesterday said that schools can test in the week leading up to, so next week. And I think that some big secondary schools, this one that gave me that example is 1,200 pupils, I think some will, and I hope, take up the offer of doing that next week. Secondly, testing in the academic sense. I think, Minister, Madam Deputy Speaker, can we please be brave and face the issue of statutory testing at primary levels at this time? Having missed 2 years now of these tests, I think maybe this is a moment to draw breath and check that they are what we want to do and they are for the right reasons. Thirdly, on the catch-up programme, which I know we'll hear more about from the Chair of the Select Committee when we can get him back online, if we can. Of course I welcome the one-off recovery premium and the fact that it's for schools to use, quote, as they feel best in the government statement. But I think we'd be wrong to rest on that. It cannot remain a one-off. And on the National Tutoring Programme, £300 million is a lot of money. And I know the Department for Education have said that it has been shown to boost catch-up learning by as much as 3 to 5 months at a time. But I want to be reassured, Madam Deputy Speaker, maybe one for my honourable friends Select Committee in due course, that external tutors who don't know the pupils, who don't know their profile as learners, or the individual strategies used by an individual school to ensure consistency in the approach of that learning, I want to be sure that that continues to be the best way to spend that large amount of money. And finally, Madam Deputy Speaker, on mental health and anxiety. I think in my area, educational catch-up will be okay in the short to the medium term. But the anxiety and the mental health challenge that I am hearing, that I referred to at the start, is structural. It's a structural weakness that is undermining it all. I have heard from so many constituents and from parents who have said that of course they're pleased that schools are going back from the 8th of March, but their children are nervous about going back. They've got used to not being out in society. Can I believe I'm even saying these words in the House of Commons? But they are incredibly anxious about doing so. And that is a structural challenge that's going to be with them long after the catch-up programmes have done hopefully their best. And I have to say that I think masks for the anxious are really not helping. So I welcome very much the government's intention to review that after the Easter holidays. And just finally, I mentioned on Monday about outdoor organised sport, not school sport, which I know is allowed from March the 8th. The fact that organised outdoor sport is not allowed at the same time, I think doesn't help with get over that anxiety and the endorphins that we know, and I know as a former public health minister, I've spoken about many times in this place, run from that sport. I think that not coming back at the same time does not help. So that, in opening the debate, I hope frames some of the key issues, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I hope we can now proceed without incident.